right? And I understand why, right? We got people on the rocket this time, so people go, oh shit, pardon my French, but it's just like, how can that be, right? Well, it's looking at the data. So we can probably pursue. I know we have pursued loss of mission, loss of crew type number assessments, but I'm not sure we understand what they mean in reality. And I'll give you an example, right? You know what the biggest risk we got right now in the enterprise? Micrometeor debris. That's it, right? Now, in my mind, is that real? It's real, right? But when have the last two bad events occurred? Going uphill in that highly energetic event. That's when it occurred, right? So we can fool ourselves sometimes into thinking, really, is that the biggest risk to the mission, MMOD? Yes, I'll make for some good reading over the next few days.
Okay. We'll take another from the phone from Josh Dinner with Space.com.
Hi, thanks so much for doing this. You've talked in the past about the stress rollout can have on SLS, and I didn't hear a mention of another wet dress rehearsal. What would be the justification for skipping another wet dress, and will you have any way to assess that helium QD back at the pad?
So I'll take the first part of that as far as the wet dress. And we've had a lot of discussion about this. Every time we tank the vehicle, it takes a little bit of the life out of those tanks. And so we certainly want to test and always make sure that everything's working. But, we've now done a couple wet dress rehearsals. We've exercised the team. We've exercised the hardware. And I'll just tell you, from my perspective, when we tank the vehicle the very next time, I would like it to be on a day that we could actually launch. I would like to do it on launch day, and if we successfully are able to successfully fully tank the vehicle, I want to be able to pull go to launch. So that's where we are at this point. And we don't want to give up any of the days in our April launch window for a wet dress rehearsal.
And as far as testing the QD at the pad, well, we've already tested the new QD in the VAB as part of our pre-launch checkouts. We do pressurize the helium bottles, and we exercise the helium system on the upper stage. So we've already verified that the new QD is working in the VAB already.
We'll take one more question from the phone, and then we'll come back here in the room. Next up, we have Katrina Miller from the New York Times.
Hi, thanks so much. I was curious for anyone who wants to answer. Can you go into a little bit of the specifics on what work needs to be completed prior to the rollout and then prior to the launch to be ready to launch April 1st? Thank you.
No, I've got it. I think I can talk about a little bit about the things that I'm looking forward to seeing over the next weeks to come. One of the things that we got to get worked out is we found a little bit of a got some interesting data on some of the thrust vector control actuators that are in fabrication up at Moog right now for Artemis 3. So we got to go figure out kind of what that means to this mission. I don't think it's a big deal, but it's just doing the analytical work to close it out and make sure that the little bit of an issue they're seeing up on the actuators for Artemis 3 doesn't indict the Artemis 2 actuators, which are shuttle heritage, right? So we had two sets of actuators. We used one on Artemis 1. We're using the second group on Artemis 3, and then all the subsequent ones are gonna be new. Our inertial navigation and control assembly on Artemis 2, ULA ran into a little bit of a problem, and they solved it by doing a good burn-in with the Inca. On one of the channels, they were experiencing some issue. I'm not sure I can communicate what the issue was. It was basically they recommended we do a good burn-in on the Inca, and Sean's teams, we've already started that, and so we got a good plan to get that closed out. And then Sean can share more on this one, but he's been working. Y'all have heard about the comm problems that we've had off and on throughout our wet dress rehearsals, and his team's off working. They've done an outstanding job at buying down risk relative to that. So those are kind of the three big ones on my radar. He can talk to you about his kind of standard work. I don't view the standard work as a big deal, and he can talk about his schedule. So over to you, Sean.
Yeah, so really, like I said earlier, the work in the VAB is going very well. We're actually slightly ahead of schedule. What's remaining really is what we call the flight termination system and checkouts. And we'll do those over the next several days, and then we'll do what we call close up the volumes. We will remove excess platforms from the LVSA area and from the core stage and the left and right hand solid rocket boosters, and get the doors locked up and ready to roll. So there's not a whole lot of work left in the VAB, fortunately. That's pretty much it. So we're close.
Okay, we'll come back here in the room. We'll go on this side. Let's start here with the black shirt.
Thank you. Manuel Masanti from Exploración Espacial. Two quick questions. First one for the panel. The OIG report says that NASA is tracking like a risk with one of the cryogenic technologies that SpaceX is using for the HLS, but it doesn't mention which one. Can you elaborate which technology is NASA tracking, which is not going to be mature enough for Artemis 3? In this case, it would be Artemis 4. And then maybe for Lori, what would be the status of the gateway, given the new architecture? Is the lunar base the new gateway?
Let me take those separately. In your first question, I'm going to say we'll have to get back to you. I would have to go back and read the details of what's in the OIG report to understand what exactly there, and I don't want to speculate on that particular question. On the second question, the new direction that the administrator put forward a couple weeks ago, that is very focused on the transportation systems in the near term. It's focused on standardizing our transportation to and from the moon. There's nothing in there that says anything about what is anticipated for any other parts of our program. We continue to execute on the other parts of our program.
Okay, let's go here to Ken.
Hi, Ken Kramer, Space Up Close. Thanks for doing all this. A lot of good information. Norm, you haven't had a question. I could ask you all a question. Let me ask you about the ICPS. I'd like to know, can you describe in detail the burns that it has to make? And if there's an issue, how long can they stay in orbit before they can go to the moon, or they have to abort the moon? Thanks.
Okay, well, thanks for your question. So they get into orbit. SLS does its job, gets Orion and the ICPS into orbit. So the first big burn that they're going to do is an apogee raise burn, and that is one that puts our apogee way out there, about 3,000 kilometers, give or take. That's what ICPS provides. After that, ICPS will separate, and they'll do a we call it a prox demo, proximity demo. And so they'll actually do some inspections of ICPS and do the handling qualities of Orion around it. So that's its major burn to get Orion where it needs to get in that first, we call it a HEO orbit. So, and then your second question, I think, was, how long can the crew stay up there?
Well, if that burn doesn't work right, what are your options?
Well, if that burn doesn't work, then you have aborts back to Earth. And so you would separate from ICPS and come back. Obviously, the first thing we would do is try to get into a safe orbit as best we could. And once you're in a safe orbit, we would assess probably in a low Earth orbit, because that gives you a matter of hours to get the crew back home. Once you commit to the high Earth orbit, it's about a day to get back home. So obviously there's a lot of risk trades that you do. There are a lot of different scenarios that play out associated with that. But what the team does is they look at the failure, the impact, and then the workaround and the risk trades relative to always keeping crew safety paramount, vehicle safety next, and all those factor into the decision making that we as a collective team would go do.
Okay, we'll go back again to the phone for several more questions. Next is Lauren Grush with Bloomberg.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my question. I'm wondering if there has been any extra scrutiny lately on the solid rocket boosters. I understand they're probably very different designs, but just for peace of mind, 2 Vulcan flights now have suffered issues with their Northrop Grumman built boosters, and then there was also an issue with an SLS booster test last year. I understand they might be disconnected, but wondering if that has prompted any closer look at the designs or if you feel confident the ones you have are ready to go. Thanks so much.
Yeah, so that first part happened under my watch when I was the SLS program manager. Yes, and the one, the ground test failure it's a totally different design, and the Northrop Grumman team and the NASA booster team did the due diligence to clear that work, and there was nothing there to indict the booster that we're flying today. And the same thing for the booster that was on the Vulcan. We went through the same activity and cleared it both, so it doesn't indict it. And there's been, I know we talked about it at some point in time along the way, especially right after the one on the Vulcan had its issue, and the team closed that action out, and it did not come up in Lori's FR or the agency FR.
Our next question is from Denise Chow with NBC.
Hi, thanks very much. I was wondering if you guys have any details on launch opportunities beyond April in case those are needed.
So my answer to that is we are focused on April. I've said in the past that, yes, there are opportunities in other months, but right now we are solely focused on April.
We'll take another question from the phone. This is from Paul Brinkman with Aerospace America.
Yes. Thanks for taking my question. I'm just trying to go back to the hydrogen and helium issues. There were problems with leaks in Artemis 1. We did hear that there were fixes made to kind of make sure that that wouldn't be a problem again. Then there were similar problems with Artemis 2. I'm just wondering, does NASA feel like it has a really firm grasp on why these leaks occur on the launch pad now? And what is being done to make sure that Artemis 3 doesn't start off with the same problem?
Yeah, so I feel like right now we're in a better place than we have been since we started this endeavor. And the team's got an extensive fault tree, and I think they're looking in the right areas. There's quite a bit of evidence that says that those Teflon seals that are used in that area, if they're assembled for some length of time, and or there's any little bit of a flaw in them, or they don't fit exactly right. In other words, it's, you need to cherry pick the seal. But I think the key thing that they're starting to hone in on is, in talking back with the supplier and then doing the investigative work themselves, is we assemble that interface in the VAB, and it sits there assembled like that for quite some time before we roll out, right? And so I think there's some good evidence that's leaning towards that material can flow and set, and it looks to me like, based on the limited data that we've got and the experience we had from Artemis 1, that we're going to be in a good posture when we roll out this next time, and I think that's, you know, as Lori alluded to, we don't feel like we need another wet dress, and this is one of those opportunities where I think we need to be. I think we're using good technical judgment and being bold, making bold decisions about what we do. Obviously, we don't want it to leak, but I'm highly confident in the technical team's ability, and they're saying basically the same words that I'm parroting back to you.
Our next question is from Micah Maidenberg with the Wall Street Journal.
Hey, good afternoon. I wanted to take one more shot at the probabilistic risk assessment discussion. In 2022, I think it was Mike Serafin did talk about a 1 in 125 potential loss scenario for the Orion vehicle on Artemis 1. Just even with the caveats about Artemis 2, the differences and the small amount of data that John talked about, can you at least provide a comparable for that number, the one to, you know, N number for Orion for Artemis 2? Thanks.
Micah, I'll just say we've addressed the risk question several times. I think if we have more follow-up to do, we can follow up with reporters separately. We have plenty more questions to get to, so we're going to go ahead and do that. We do want to take one more question on the phone from Marcia Smith with Space Policy Online.
Thanks so much. My question actually was about Orion as well. We've been spending all this time talking about SLS and ICPS and the tests on those systems. Could you just give us an update on when the last time the Orion service module systems have been tested? And does the Orion service module only fire once? It only has to work once in order to get them around the moon and back home. Could you just walk us through that part of the flight?
I don't know the last time that we've run any test on the service module, but I know Norm's here, and he can talk about relative to how they utilize the propulsion system on the service module, which I think is important relative to this conversation.
Yeah, service module we depend on a lot, obviously. A lot of the critical burns are done. TLI is done with the service module through the OMS engines. We have a series of jets on there as well. So it's critical to the mission, and we use it until the very last day when we jettison it and Orion comes home.
Another one from the phone, we have Ryan Keaton with NASASpaceflight.com.
Thanks very much for your time. I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. You said you're not going to be doing another wet dress rehearsal. I'm just wondering if you're going to be doing any tanking at all, like a partial tanking test or an integrity test, or are you absolutely set that the first time you're going to tank this rocket from now on is going to be for a launch attempt and there are no other scenarios? Thank you.
Appreciate the question. Yeah, we've done a lot of talking about this and what kind of testing might be beneficial. And at this point, we've demonstrated that the seals that we have are the best seals we've ever seen on the SLS and not that this QD. And so, in our opinion, there's not a lot more to be gained from that. So we are, as I indicated previously, the next time we tank the vehicle will be when we're attempting to launch.
Our next question is from Nicole Mortellaro from the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation.
Hi, Lori, this is for you. I know that you mentioned that you're focused on April with launch attempt, but is there any way we can get an update, like just for May? Because for media, it's very difficult to get any hotel rooms or anything like that booked. So is there any way we'll have an updated calendar?
I understand, and I hear you. As I said, right now we are very focused on April. If it starts to look like that could be a challenge, we'll reconsider, but at this point we're very focused on April.
All right, we'll come back into the room here in the blue.
Zach Covey, Spectrum News. I wanted to ask either Sean or John this question. You guys, last time we had the flight readiness review, we were talking about repetition of your crews. If there was a reason that the VAB had to come back into use and the rocket had to go back, you wanted your crews to continue to practice. Can you go a little bit in on how the past couple of weeks have been for both of your crews to get ready to this point?
Well, I will tell you that we've had a lot of work to do coming back from the VAB, so our crews have been very busy with reopening the vehicle volumes to do the flight termination systems work. I mentioned earlier today that we had the time to do another closeout crew demo in the VAB. We took advantage of that opportunity to make sure that we were able to execute to our timelines and keep our closeout crew sharp and ready to go on launch day. And, if we had a more extended time in the VAB, we probably would have done some more launch team training simulations. We really didn't have the time to do that, and we don't really think we needed to do that given the short VAB turnaround time that we had this time, that we expect to have.
Well, talking about the flight control team and the readiness, obviously we've used the time to do a few more sims, a few more practice sessions. We've done, I think, over this whole journey for Artemis II, about 126 days worth of simulations, both standalone with the crew, with the flight control team, with the integrated engineering teams as well, with the mission management teams. And so we've not only focused on specific training, but full integrated training. So we're still taking advantage of that since February. We continue to hone the teams. The teams are working very well together. And at the end of the day, I am fully confident that if we have any problems, it's the integrated team that's going to pull us through. And that means the crew and the ground teams working together as one in support of the mission. So we use this time wisely, and we hope it all goes nominal, but if it doesn't, you got the best teams on and off the planet to take care of any problems.
And we have time for one final question. We'll take that from the phone. That will be Christopher Mick with the Hudson Star Observer.
Thank you very much. I believe this would be for Mr. Honeycutt. I understand the procedure with the timeline, and there's not going to be a tanking test due to the life of the booster. Would there be any consideration with the kind of stress of the rollout back to the pad and maybe changing out those LH2 seals before the first launch attempt, or is that just not going to be part of the procedure?
That's not going to be part of the procedure.
All right. And with that, we'll go ahead and conclude today. Thank you very much to our participants for participating today. You can stay tuned for further updates on nasa.gov, and we're going to go ahead and pop up the specific URL where you can find that information about our progress, nasa.gov/Artemis. Thank you all for joining us today.
Slack, how you doing?
You have to do this with 15 kilos. 100 times.
Good? Okay, I gotta let go. Okay, stop. I'm not caught. Okay, good. Go ahead.